Hi everyone. In this video we are going to add an LED to our dashboard, and we're also going to go in and split up our flow into multiple flows. So let's get started. First, let me get out of your way and let's go in and take a look at our Node-RED dashboard, or excuse me, our Node-RED workspace. And this is where we left off, right? You can see over here our message payload. It's still our temperature, 76, what have you. And our dashboard, we had our two different groups, and we were able to see our gauge, the text node, and the temperature trend. Now let's go ahead and add in an LED object, okay? So if I want an LED in here, again, if you remember from an earlier video, we imported an LED module. And all the way at the bottom of our dashboard nodes, there is an LED node that we can bring in. That's great. Before we do that, though, we need to do a little bit of work in the PLC. What do we want to use to control that LED with? We need to do that. So let's go do it. So if you would, open up WinLadder, and we'll go back to our program. And you can see this is the code that we already had in there before, where we had, read in the temperature data, converted it to float, and we had done some initialization of the connection status, publish status, and subscribe status registers when the PLC started. And we automated the broker connection process and the publishing process, right? So we don't need to change any of that. That's fine. What we want to do is let's go ahead and add, maybe we'll make a PLC heartbeat bit, right? So that we can see for sure on our dashboard, is our PLC communicating or not? Because right now on our dashboard, we could look and see data, but we don't know for sure that the PLC is actually updating it. We could see maybe the trend chart may not update, but we're not sure. So let's go add that. All right, so let's hit enter here. I'm on the very last rung of our program. Let me slide that over a touch. I'm on the last rung of the program, and I'll hit enter to make a new rung. And what I want to do now is I just want to make an LED or an object, or a bit rather, that will just toggle on and off every so often, just so we can see that on the dashboard. And if we see it flipping from on to off, we know it's good. So let's do that. What I want to do is get a normally open contact. So I'll go to my Home tab, Basic Instructions, and Normally Open. Left click to drop it in, double click to edit it. And I want this to be addressed to Special Internal Relay M8125. We've used this before. It's our in operation output. Again, when the PLC is in run mode, your ladder is being scanned, this bit will be on every single scan. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to create a dual timer. Okay. So if I go to Advanced and scroll down about 2/3 of the way down to Dual/Teaching Timer, what I want is this very top one, DTML, a 1-second resolution dual timer. I'll left click the drop this in, double click to edit it. Now, the way the dual timer works is you have two sources. Source 1 is your on time. Source 2 is your off time. Now, we can hard code this, which is what we're going to do, but know that you could also use data registers in here as well if you wanted to make this a variable time, if you wanted to be able to change the on and the off times. In our case, I just want it to be on for a couple of seconds and off for a couple of seconds, so that's fine. But again, if you did want to vary this and be able to adjust it, you could use data registers here for your sources, and then either from an HMI or just somewhere within your code based on conditions, you could change those values in the registers. All right, we've got a couple of destinations, destination 1, destination 2. Destination 1 is the bit that we want to control based on the schedule. And in this case, I'm going to use M500, and I've already went into the tag editor and added this tag for us. We could have done it, or excuse me, added this comment. We could have done it right in here as well, just typed it in here, okay? Destination 2 is the workspace for this instruction. It needs a couple of registers, and I'll use D500, and again, that's going to use D501 as well, since this uses two registers, okay? So I'll put that in there just so I know about it. Okay, I'm good with this. So again, what this is going to do is it will turn on M500 for a couple of seconds, turn it off for a couple of seconds, on for a couple, off for a couple, as long as the PLC is in run mode. Okay, great. And let's go ahead, I'll simulate this. So if I go to online and simulation, that way you can see what's going to happen. You can see that bit just kind of every couple of seconds flipping back and forth between 0 and 1, off and on. That's what we want. Good enough. All right. But now I want to send this out over MQTT. It's great that I've got it within the PLC, but I got to push that value out, right? So how do we do that? If I go to the configuration tab and go back into our MQTT settings, remember that's on Ethernet port 1 of the FC6A Plus, scroll all the way down to the bottom under MQTT settings and click configure. If I go to our publish settings, right, I'm already publishing on this topic. I could add another topic if I wanted to, but I don't really need to. What I can do is go and configure the payload to add in this bit, and that's what I'm going to do. So if I click on configure underneath the payload, you can see I've still got the temperature, and it's a value, and it's sent as a float. If I come down here and click on new value, now I can specify I want to send something else. Since this is really going to be a heartbeat bit for the PLC, I'll just call this, or I'll put in for the name, heartbeat. My data type, this is just a bit, so I'll change this to Boolean B. Okay. Now you'll notice with MQTT, when you send out a Boolean, it will either send out true or false. Okay. This isn't sending out 0 or 1 when this is a Boolean. It's sending out true or false as the message, as the value part of the message. Okay. Now, I don't want this fixed. I want to do this based on a device. And again, that device is what we just set up, is M500. So when M500 is off, it will send false. When M500 is on, this will send out true. All right, I'm good with this. Let's click OK. You can see that added into the message here. So this is going to send out temperature and a value, heartbeat and a value. Okay, and again, this value will be true or false for the heartbeat. Okay, let's click OK there. Click OK there, click OK there. And let's go ahead and download this to our PLC. Okay, that's downloaded. Now let's go ahead and go back into Node-RED. And what I'll do is, if you're not there already, let's click on this debug icon. Again, it looks like a squashed bug. And let me delete what was in there so we can see what's fresh. And now we'll see for our message.payload, we'll see we've got not only the temperature data, we've also got this heartbeat data. And again, this should be toggling between true and false every couple of seconds. And that's what it's doing. Okay. So now we're successfully monitoring that bit out of the PLC, and we're seeing it change state from true to false. So let's put in our LED object, or our LED node rather. So again, our LED node is all the way at the bottom of our dashboard section in our nodes. We can grab the LED, drag and drop it in, double click on it to edit it. Now, since this is doing PLC communication status, I think I'm going to make another group for this. I want that in its own section by itself. I want to be able to see that very, very clearly, not buried in with some other things. So for group, I'll click on the group name here, select add new UI group, and then click the pencil. Again, for the tab, I still want it to be on the IDEC automation dashboard, but I'll make a new group by changing this name. And maybe I'll call this PLC communications, for example. Click add. All right. Size, I'll leave at automatic. I'm fine with that. For the label, maybe I make this say PLC comms status, something like that. Label placement and alignment, again, you can choose how you place it on the left or the right. The alignment, You can choose the shape of your LED, whether it's a circle or a square. You can show like a little glowing effect around the outside of the LED, almost like it's really illuminated. You can turn that on or off, however you want. And down at the bottom here, we'll see colors for the value of message.payload. So this LED is looking for message.payload to be either false or true. Okay. When it's false, it's going to show a color of red. When it's true, it'll show a color of green. Okay. Now, there are other options. You can go in and change this, but we really don't need to, because we can make, if you remember from the last couple of examples, we can make message.payload be anything that we want, right, with that little switch node. So let's go do that. Okay. So we want message.payload to be either false or true to control this LED. Let's click on Done. And let me go up to our functions. And let me grab, and I keep saying switch, I apologize. Let me grab the change node. The change node is the same one that we used before. Okay. Let me double click on that to edit it. And now in this case, what I want to do is I want to set my message.payload equal to my message.payload. Can anybody guess what this is going to be? Remember before when we split out the temperature value, we chose, it was called temperature, right? To split out that heartbeat signal, we just need to go grab heartbeat. So we want this to be message.payload.heartbeat. Okay. Click Done. And now I can tie this change node to my MQTT input node. I can connect my change node to my LED. I think that's connected. Yeah. And if I go over here, before I deploy it, I want to look at this in the dashboard. So again, if I come over here to the top right and I click this triangle drop down and go to dashboard, now I can see I've got 3 sections, right? Monitor read only, temp trend, and PLC comms. And I've got a little LED there. All right, I'm good with that for now. Let's deploy that. And if we go to our dashboard, okay, I've got my 3 sections, my 3 groups. And in PLC communications, I've got PLC comm status, and I've got my little LED here that is changing back and forth between red and green, just to let us know that we've got good communications. Okay. Now, I can test this out. Let me go into WinLadder. I can stop the PLC. I can basically take it out of run mode. So let me do that. Let me go into WinLadder. And again, I'm connected to the PLC over USB. So I can simply come up here. If I go to the online tab in this PLC section, I can click stop. And that will stop or take the PLC out of run mode. Okay. Now, if I do that, and if I go back to my Node-RED dashboard, what I should see is this PLC comm status LED is not updating. It's not changing, right? Our temperature isn't changing. It's not updating. The PLC is not in run mode. It's not pushing values, okay? This is just the last, these are just the last values that Node-RED brought in, okay? So that's why I like to put on this little PLC comm status LED, just so I know if my PLC is actually communicating and I'm seeing live values. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to add, just because this can be confusing. Right now, this is absolutely correct. PLC comm status red. You would think that's not working, and that's true. But what if we were on the cycle when the PLC comm status was green and it lost connection? Well, then it would look like the PLC comm status was good. So what we want to do is put a little bit of a note in here that says, hey, if this PLC comm status LED is blinking or flashing back and forth, then we know we've got good communications. Let's do that, okay? So what we'll do is we'll go into our Node-RED dashboard and let's add, what we want is a text node again, okay? We want a text node. So let's come over here down to our dashboard and let's grab a text node. Okay. Now, I'm not going to connect this to anything. I don't want this to display any kind of a value. I just want to display static text. Okay, so let me double click on this to edit it. Again, I can pick the group that I want this to be in, and I want this in the PLC communications group, right? And for my label, what do I want it to say? Well, maybe I have it say, if PLC comms status LED is flashing between red and green, the PLC is communicating. Okay. Now for my value format here, I really don't want anything. So I'm just going to delete that. If I click done, now we'll see here in the PLC comm status in the dashboard section of Node-RED, I can see that LED, I can see this static text as well. And I'll probably go ahead and put this text before the LED. So I'll just change the positions of it there. Okay, just drag it up. Now if I hit deploy, and if I go to my dashboard, now I can see PLC communications, and I've got the text that I typed in. I can still see this isn't flashing back and forth. The PLC still stopped, right? But now I at least know, hey, this isn't flashing, so I know I don't have communications here. Let me go back to WinLadder. Let me start the PLC. And remember, this will take a few seconds to connect to AWS, but in just a few seconds, we should see this LED start changing state again. And there we go. You can see the LED now is changing state. My temperature value is updating. And you can see what happens on my trend chart. You can see where the last time we actually had data that was live, and it drew a big straight line to where the next live point was, right? In between, let me try to get there. Between there and there, that's when the PLC was off, okay? If we don't have this comm status LED though, we don't really know that. We could look at that and say, well, okay, the temperature was increasing on that time, which it really was, and it looks like it was linear, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We really don't know. We don't have any comm status in that time period, okay? But this PLC comm status LED will let you know, again, when you've got good data, when you're communicating, and when you're not. All right. So one other thing I want to look at just within Node-RED before we end this video is right now this flow is not too bad. I mean, it's pretty easy to see and take and keep track of, but to me, I think it would be nice to have it split out just a little bit. You know, I've got a monitor, a temp trend, and a PLC communications section. Maybe I want to have 3 different flows that show that to make it easier when I go back into Node-RED, especially if I don't look at it for a while, to figure out where is everything and what was I doing, right? So one thing you can do within Node-RED is you can make multiple flows, okay? So maybe this flow will be our monitor flow. Let me double click, and I did that quickly. If you just double click where it says flow 1, I can make this say monitor read only, and that'll just be the name of this particular flow. If I want to add more, if I want to add one for our temp trend, I can click on this little plus to add a flow. Same thing, double click on the name to change it. This is our temp trend. And let me add one more for our PLC communications. And again, change that name, PLC communications. All right. So I've got three flows here, right? Now, what I can do is in this monitor read only, we had what? Let's look at our dashboard. I've got the temperature gauge and I've got the temperature text there. Okay, so I've got these 2 things. So what I can do is I can just copy out what I want or cut out what I want and put on this temp trend. Just to make sure I don't do anything silly or miss something, what I can do, probably, and to me it's just the easiest way to do it, is I can click and drag. Oh, can I get around everything? No, it's not going to let me get around everything there. So I can click on each object, hold down my control key, try this too. See if this will, nah, it won't let me do it. All right, let me try this one more time. Let me see if I can zoom this out just a little so I can grab everything. Let me see if I can just click and drag around it. Yeah, that worked. So if I click and drag around it, hit Control C, it'll copy the nodes. And then if I go into, let's say, temp trend, and I can paste those nodes, and you'll notice it copied all the lines and everything with it. Okay, now I can zoom this back in so I can see what I was doing. Okay, so in my temperature trend, all I really want is this temperature trend chart and this change node, right? So I can delete out of this particular flow my temp trend. I can delete that, I can delete that, delete that, that, and that. I'll leave that debug node in there. I like having those in just so I can see what's going on. But now this is a lot cleaner, right? Let me do the same thing for PLC communications. Let me go there and I'll hit Control V to paste that back in as well. And again, in my PLC communications, all I really want are this change node, the LED, that little bit of text, and my PLC input node, right? The other stuff I can delete. So let me do that. So my PLC communications flow, get rid of, whoop, Control Z is your friend. I still had everything selected. So let me get rid of the things I don't want. I don't want that, that, or that. So in PLC communications, I just had that change node, my LED, and that little bit of text. Okay. Now let me go back to my monitor, my first one where I had everything. And again, all I wanted in my monitor was just this top little stuff. So let me get rid of that. Stuff that I don't want. So now it's a little cleaner, a little easier to kind of keep track of, right? I've got different flows for each of my groups, and it's really easy for me to bounce through and see what's going on. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and deploy this. And go back to our Node-RED dashboard. And you can see we've still got everything just like we did before. Okay. We didn't really change anything. All we did was make it easier for us to keep track of the different sections and keep track of the flow so we don't have 1,400 lines going through everything. It's clean. It's easier to see. Okay. All right. Now, one last thing that I do want to do is I think I want this PLC communication section to be all the way to the left. Just so, I mean, that's typically the first place you look on a screen is towards the top left in that direction. So I'm going to drag this group up and stick it up here. And again, all I did was left click on the name of this group, this PLC communications, left click and hold and drag it up. Okay, so now it's going to be reordered on my dashboard. If I click deploy and go into my dashboard, now you'll see I've got my PLC communications section comes in first. It's all the way to the left. Okay. All right, this is a good start. On the next video, what we'll do is we'll add a little bit more into this monitor read only area. We'll take a look and see if we want to be able to show a message out here based on like a bit status, whether something's on or off. We'll take a look and see how to do that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we will hopefully see you in the next video.